A major reason to use the pants build system is that it gives you really fine-grained caching of the task you run when writing code, like running test. Pants runs each test file as a separate process, all concurrently, which allows for caching as precise as a single file, meaning that once you run a test, if its inputs haven't changed, you don't need to rerun those same tests. So for example, this is a cold run that runs our unit test. And we can rerun it and get back the results nearly instantly. Now, if we make a change to only a single test, we can rerun that command and we'll see that only that test needs to rerun. This works because Pants has a fine-grained understanding of what each file in your project depends on, meaning what other code and what other third-party requirements a file uses. This all happens automatically through a thing called dependency inference, where Pants will read your import statements and map those imports back to the rest of your project. So if you change the test itself or change any of the dependencies, Pants knows it needs to rerun the test. For example, several of our tests here depend on this library file stringutil.py. So changing it should invalidate those 3 tests, but we should be able to use the cache for everything else. This fine-grained caching gets really useful when you have a large repository and your test suite would normally take a long time to run. Now, all this caching so far has been happening locally. But even more powerful is to use a feature called remote caching, where the cache lives in the cloud. Pants uses gRPC and the open source remote execution API to have fine-grained and low latency caching. Here, I'm going to tell Pants to ignore our local cache and instead use the remote cache. And this first run will populate the cache for us. And then we can run again, and we'll see that this time the remote cache was used. Where remote caching gets really useful is that you can share the same cache across multiple machines. So, for example, in CI, all your workers can use the same cache, meaning that they normally only need to run tests that are impacted by the PR's changes. Locally, you can share the same cache as your coworkers. So if they had already run your test suite, you can leverage their results.